He hopes to set up an internal inquiry into alleged war crimes in the country within about a month. The island nation has been under intense international pressure to cooperate with a UN investigation on the same subject that's already underway. But the new president told the BBC that the UN panel wouldn't be invited into Sri Lanka, although their views would be considered. Our South Asia editor Charles Haviland has sent this report.
The new president has been in London for events related to the Commonwealth, which Sri Lanka chairs. But he's also on a diplomatic mission to improve his country's image, dented by allegations of serious human rights abuses, present and past. The decades-long civil war saw terrible atrocities by both sides. This was the bloody aftermath of a Tamil Tiger train bombing. And this was the tumultuous end to the war, during which it's widely alleged that army shelling killed tens of thousands of Tamil civilians cooped up with the Tigers, and that the government side killed captured rebels or suspects. Like his predecessor, President Sirisena won't invite a UN war crimes investigation panel into the country. But he told the BBC's Sinhala service he would set up an internal Sri Lankan war crimes inquiry within a month, and it would take the views of UN experts into account.
What we mean by a domestic mechanism is one that accords with the laws and regulations of our country, a process that we create under our constitutional framework. We will advise those officials to work impartially, in a balanced way, independently.
He even said action might be taken to punish anyone found guilty. For those affected by the conflict, many questions remain unanswered. Around the end of the war, as these internment camps for Tamils filled up, hundreds more Tamils disappeared after handing themselves in to the army, while others are known to be in detention but haven't been charged even after years. The new president says he is seriously working to resolve these issues.
We expect to begin a new journey to promote reconciliation, cohabitation, brotherhood and friendship among the people of Sri Lanka, and to win over international opinion on these issues.
It's only 2 months since Mr. Sirisena won a surprise election victory by suddenly standing against his former ally, the then President Mahinda Rajapaksa. He said the latter tried to mount a coup to retain power on election night, but others prevented it.
Clearly there was a coup attempt. They tried. They made a certain attempt not to release the election result, to impose a curfew. But other sections, the election commissioner and the police, did not allow that to happen.
These Tamils demonstrating against Mr. Sirisena in London insist that nothing has changed with the new government. Maithripala Sirisena, new leader of what has been an increasingly isolated state, will now try to prove them wrong, and that he's serious about a lasting solution to Sri Lanka's ethnic problem. Charles Haviland, BBC News.
Well, here in the studio now is Dr. Dusyan Nandakumar, who's a member of the editorial board for the Tamil Guardian, a UK-based newspaper which has been covering Sri Lankan affairs for over 16 years, has a lot of his own family in the northeast of the country. Thank you so much for joining us here in the programme. Your reaction to what you heard the new president say about this new internal inquiry?
Well, I think Tamil demands have been very clear since the end of the conflict, and even more so since President Sirisena has taken up office. In the last few weeks, you'll see the biggest ever protests have taken place in the Jaffna since the end of the armed war, calling for an international inquiry and justice for the tens of thousands of those who've been massacred. And I think, given Sri Lanka's long and torturous history of failed commissions, criticised by human rights groups worldwide, Amnesty International called it 20 years of make-believe, there's a deep and justified scepticism with any sort of domestic process.
So broadly, if they don't end up cooperating with the UN inquiry, if they don't allow any prosecutions, because you said that as well, then there's probably no point to this internal inquiry.
Well, like I said, it's been labelled as 20 years of make-believe. The Tamil people themselves have been very clear that, you know, they have no hope for justice under a domestic mechanism. And actually, Tamil hopes now, as we've seen with recent spurs in protests, rest with the international community. And there's really a newfound hope, a newfound confidence and belief that the international community will come and serve justice for them.
We saw the pictures of there going into Downing Street, but in terms of, I mean, you regularly speak to all of your family there in the northeast of the country. I mean, can Sri Lanka move forward unless they successfully confront all of the things that happened in the Civil War?
Well, I think that plays a very key part. I think to move forward and get real reconciliation, which is something that we've all been aiming for, there needs to be real accountability, truth and justice, and the ongoing issues which are still going on need to be resolved. I mean, there's intense militarization of the north and east. The Sri Lankan army has grown bigger year on year post-conflict. In some Tamil villages, there's as many as 1 soldier for every 3 civilians there.
And how much does that interfere with day-to-day life?
Well, completely. I mean, there's a huge climate of impunity and there's an environment of fear there. Human rights abuses still occur. There are still disappearances and murders, and these things still take place, human rights violations, and that needs to stop.
In terms of progress, we've heard a variety of promises from the new president, freeing up access for information, for one. He's also talked about the military as well. Are there signs that potentially we are making progress moving forward?
Well, the question of whether there is kind of freedom of information and freedom of access, that would be a very welcome reprieve. But unless these things are dismantled, senior government ministers have come out saying that the army will not be withdrawn from the north and east and troop numbers would not be reduced. And unless those things really start to move away, I don't think we're going to make any progress on those issues.
And a final quick thought about the international dimension. Does that, in your view, need to step up a pace in terms of a new person in that office?
Well, I think international pressure has been key to driving events forward with Sri Lanka. I think we've only seen some of these concessions or pledges made because of international pressure. And I think with that, that's going to be key to driving future events on the island forward.
Doctor, thanks very much for those thoughts. Thank you.